Then, as you and I were talking about before we went on the air, you've got this CNN release about, or story about, Bradley Cooper, the admiral in charge of Central Command, the command responsible for this war, being so lost that he's pulsing through his intelligence community his own forces for ideas. A request went out, apparently, if you're to believe this story, from the commander, Bradley Cooper. It went out to his command, I need some ideas. We're not winning this thing. I need some ideas. So that shows you the frustration of the military. On top of that, I'm hearing that the commander-in-chief, the SACEUR, he wears two hats, the U.S. commander, and the Supreme Allied Commander for Europe, NATO commander, Air Force General Alexis Grinkowicz. I'm hearing he's really putting some ointment on the fire in the Mediterranean, not just with regard to naval forces, most of which, if not all of which, belong to him, Sixth Fleet, Standing Naval Force NATO, and so forth. And they're being asked to defend Israel when this thing comes together and Israel gets under really horrendous attack from Iran. And he's saying, rightfully so, I can't do that and support my own war plans. And you've got other commanders in chief around, they don't call them SINCs anymore, they call them combatant commanders around the world. Outside of EUCOM, you got AFRICOM and you got INDOPACOM, of course, who are saying similar things to Kane about their munitions being bled down to the point where they can't fulfill their war plans. So you have major contention, finally, in the Pentagon amongst some fairly high-level commanders. And I don't think Hegseth has a clue what to do about it. Kane knows that he's got a problem with munitions and got a problem with these commanders. But this discord in the American military and the idea that Bradley Cooper is asking his people for ideas tells you how distraught we are and how unsuccessful we are in this conflict. And we will continue to be unsuccessful. On top of that, you've got the president making remarks that are unconscionable. Again, talking about bringing terror through bombs and so forth. I mean, you can't corral Trump, apparently, even if you have some inclination to do so and you have some reason to do so, you can't. He just goes out and says these things. And most of it that he's saying about diplomacy here, diplomacy there, the Iranians are caving, they want to talk again, they're all lies. They're bald-faced lies that he's making up either out of whole cloth or grabbing from Laura Loomer or someone else. He's not helping himself at all in terms of the actual problem he's got, which is still the same problem. It's still the Strait of Hormuz. It's still the nuclear program. It's still the ballistic missiles. It's all those things that he said he was starting this thing for in the first place, and nothing, zero, has been achieved. And in fact, in many cases, like with the Strait of Hormuz, it has backfired on him big time. So we're sitting here with a president who has no idea how to get out of the mess that he's in and continues to lie regularly about it in terms of diplomacy going on and in terms of military action going on, because he knows no other thing to do. Now, I would submit to you that we cannot lie our way through the commander-in-chief out of this conflict. And so we're in a real mess right now, probably a deeper mess than even I thought we would eventually get into.
Laurie, in the article that you mentioned on CNN, it says that we're looking for a new creative and unconventional ways to pressure and punish Iran. And what comes to your mind when it comes to the unconventional ways? What does that mean to you?
It could mean any number of things, including using ground forces in a selective way, including going after Karg Island, for example. It could mean any number of things. It could also mean using nuclear weapons. I hope not, but it could. But it shows you the desperation of Bradley Cooper, even if this is a true story, and it rings true to me, but it shows you the desperation. What can we do? Nothing that we have done that we have been authorized to do, or maybe the things we've done that we haven't been authorized to do, I've been there before, has worked. And it doesn't appear that it's going to work. So we can keep dropping bombs all day long until we run out of bombs, but it's not going to break Iran's will. So what can we do? I would think this is the ultimate sign of desperation. If this story is true, that a 4-star commander is going out to his command to seek ideas about how to take this conflict and turn it around, make it a positive result rather than the negative results we now have brewing, is unbelievable. It's happening apparently. I don't think CNN made it up, but it is unbelievable. It's incredible, in other words. And it shows the desperation of this administration, its military arm, including Hegseth, and its civilian arm. They simply don't know what to do. They started this war. They're pursuing this war with the only way that the military seems to have at its disposal, which is mostly bombs and other things like that, blowing up on Iranian territory. They thought the regime would collapse. Bibi told them the regime would collapse. Bibi's in deep trouble now, politically and militarily, and nothing's working. I would not want to be in this administration's shoes by any stretch of the imagination. They have screwed everything. Everything that they've touched since 28 February, they have screwed it up.
When they're talking about the ground invasion, Larry, yesterday we've learned that Iranian special ground forces, they have implemented, carried out something like more than 14 operations on Iraqi soil in Iraqi Kurdistan. It means that the fight on the ground has happened or is happening as we talk. That's why you see Iranian attacks on Iraqi Kurdistan and in that areas. It wasn't inside Iran, it was outside of Iran. In Iraq, it's somehow Iran is preemptive the attack, is going preemptive on any sort of possibility of the ground invasion from that border.
Well, what I'd been hearing was that they were trying to get the Peshmerga and other associated forces in northern Iraq to participate. And I heard they failed completely. The Peshmerga have been stooges for the United States before. And I think it would be extremely difficult given the situation that they're now experiencing in northern Iraq, which is not a bad experience. I mean, you could say in some ways the most successful part of Iraq is that portion. And some of the reason is because of the Kurdish leadership figuring things out and cooperating a little bit better and so forth. So I don't think you're going to talk them into conducting military operations inside Iran. So my question would be, what are you doing? Are you trying to mount military operations from Kurdistan into Iran under the guise of it being Peshmerga or under the guise of it being Kurdistan forces? I don't see how that could work. And I return to my original point. They've been fooled so many times by the United States. I go all the way back to Operation Provide Comfort, for example. We've screwed them so many times when we asked them to help us or to do things with us that I wouldn't fall for our tricks anymore. I simply wouldn't. So I don't know what they're talking about doing out of Kurdistan unless we're talking about using our forces out of Kurdistan to do something to try and disrupt Iran. I don't think that would work. I really don't. And I'm wondering how the Turks feel about this, because the Turks had come to a fairly good accommodation with the forces that they were always having to send troops down in to regulate every now and then in Kurdistan, because the Turks have a real interest, a significant interest, not only in what's happening in Southeast Turkey, but also what's happening in Iran, Syria, and Iraq. And they had seemingly settled their problems They haven't put any troops in there that I'm aware of significance in a long time in Iraq. So this would be stirring that up again. I don't think they'd be happy about that either. And I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting, as Doug McGregor says, it's going to happen, for Turkey to enter this fray in some way and to throw its weight in somewhere. I'll be very interested to see what the Turks do if Netanyahu really goes whole hog in Lebanon again. He's still got Hezbollah to deal with, and Hezbollah is a viable front. I suspect they're resupplied fairly well now. If you think about that railroad coming into Iran from the west or the east into Tehran, and you think about the Caspian link, I'm pretty sure some of those supplies have gotten to Hezbollah. So they're ready to go again too. And if Hezbollah joins with Iran in this attack that may be coming on Israel, it's going to be hell to pay for Israel.
I think in the case of Israel, it doesn't matter if you have Benjamin Netanyahu or maybe Naftali Bennett coming. Naftali Bennett said he feels that Qatar is worse than Iran because Qatar is somehow playing with the United States, trying to say we are not the enemy, but they're the enemy of Israel, he said.
You wonder how much of that is political rhetoric because he wants to replace Netanyahu. But I suspect it's genuine. I don't know Bennett that well, but I suspect there are some, let's put it this way, there are some in the Likud in particular, but in the smaller parties that compose the coalition who don't like Qatar at all. And they're probably right. I mean, when you parse it closely, they're probably right. But some of that's Netanyahu's fault because he was using Qatar to funnel money to Hamas in order to support Hamas over the Palestinian Authority because Hamas was against a two-state solution and the Palestinian Authority was for it. So he didn't like the Palestinian Authority and he wanted to indirectly use Hamas to keep them from being triumphant. And he was fairly successful with that, only the blowback on October the 7th was significant. If you believe Netanyahu didn't know it was coming, and if you believe Netanyahu didn't let it come. Now, there's a school of thought amongst people more expert in the region than I that Netanyahu knew all about it and used it like 9/11 and the way we use 9/11 in America to respond with military force, sanctions, and everything else. It gave the neoconservatives an excuse to implement the clean break strategy, in other words, of which we're seeing the last chapter right now. The last chapter was overthrow of the regime in Iran and ensuring Israel's security and perpetuity, and also ensuring greater Israel. These strategies are all mixed up now. They're all, to a certain extent, confounded, but enough of them have come true, both ours after 9/11, the global war on terror, if you will, and this business with Iran now. This latest chapter is not expressly out of the clean break strategy, and I don't think any of the neoconservatives would have thought Donald Trump would be their rescuer in that regard, but he has been. He is. He's the one who's going after regime change with bombs, bullets, and bayonets.
The situation, Larry, is desperate for Donald Trump. You can understand it from latest comments on Chevron and Exxon. He said that these people are making a lot of money and they're not sharing that because of the shortages, because of what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz. When he goes against Exxon and Chevron, there is something big going on.
Yeah, those are two of his biggest supporters. Yeah. And I just watched, I don't know if you've seen the documentary that Abby Martin and some others did on climate change and the climate crisis, and the biggest contributor there too. She's absolutely right in this documentary. I mean, the American military is like something like the 54th state, right with Portugal on the list of fossil fuel consumers or whatever.